I've been holding on to this footage for quite some time because more interesting things just keep coming up. But today, I want to talk about the Tier 8 IJN Tech Tree Cruiser, Takahashi, which I submit to you may, in fact, be the worst cruiser at Tier 8. I'll talk about why, but I think the gameplay here should demonstrate that point pretty well for me. Before we get there, though, because this demonstration will occur near the end of the battle, we should talk about the stats. Keep in mind they are going to be influenced by my commander build, and I've got this Matsuji guy at the helm. He is a historical commander. You could get him a while back by completing a calendar event. I don't think you can get him anymore, but he appears to be designed for this line of IJN light cruisers. Most of his skills, however, go toward buffing the torpedo characteristics, which I think is potentially kind of useless on this line. Not that the torpedoes themselves are useless, but buffing them in exchange for not buffing the guns, I think, is not great. So probably a different commander is warranted here. But I don't think when it comes to the guns, well, let's just say I think there is a strict limit to how much polishing you can do to a turd, and no matter what you do, it's still going to be just that. In any case, Takahashi, it's got 49,500 HP, which is fine. It's a light cruiser. You don't expect it to have the biggest HP pool in the world. The guns here, as they hit the Minotaur, they do some decent damage. That's 5.4k. There are, 15 of these guns. They are 150 millimeter light cruiser guns. The HE does maximum damage of 2,650, which is why the strike there against the Minotaur was so nice in terms of damage. And they've got a 12% fire chance, which I think is actually not all that great, considering the reload on the guns is 12.9 seconds, which I think is by far the longest reload time for any light cruiser. And that is one of the main problems with this ship. The AP, which is more or less entirely useless, does a maximum damage of 3,100. You won't get very good results with the AP at any kind of distance. As you could see against the Minotaur, these shells are exceptionally floaty, and I don't think the AP has very good pen. I almost never use it, and every time I try to switch to it, even against broadside cruisers at fairly close range, the results seem to always be disappointing. Torpedoes, we've launched some at the Minotaur, none have connected. There are, how many of these torpedoes? 16, 8 on either side of the ship. They have a 14.5 kilometer range, which is quite long. But, they are IJN torpedoes, and you would probably expect them to be faster than 58 knots. But that's the top speed. They do hit for 20,967 damage, so those are some true IJN numbers. And the torpedo detectability by sea is 1.7 kilometers. Same detectability as the Shimakaze's torpedoes. But the Shimakaze's torpedoes go much faster, which means you have less time to react. With a detectability of 1.7 km and a 58 knot speed, and the fact that they are IJN torpedoes, which do have a propensity for spreading out and creating gaps in between them that ships can weave through, well, I don't know how effective the torpedoes really are. If you want a torpedo cruiser, there's the whole Pan-Asian line. Those are true torpedo cruisers where the torpedoes are actually useful. I wouldn't say that about the Takahashi or this line generally, even though the torpedo angles, as we can see, are very, very good, especially compared to other IJN ships. AA defenses are perhaps good. I don't know. I haven't really had the chance to test this out against too many carriers, ironically, because I just haven't played it, especially since this game, honestly. I played it quite extensively at the beginning of the update, and, it does shoot down planes, but how much does that matter these days? Maneuverability on the ship, pretty good. 35 knot speed, 8.5 second rudder shift. Fairly agile. The rudder shift is a bit on the long side, but the speed is good. And the detectability by sea, when you build into it, 9.6 kilometers. So on paper, all of these stats are fairly decent, but when it comes to playing this ship, I think the downside is, you can launch these torpedoes, but There's a lot of luck when it comes to landing torpedoes, and there's so much room and time for the enemy to maneuver. So, like most light cruisers, you probably want to rely on your guns. But the whole nature of the light cruiser, if we think about something like the Colbert or Minotaur out there, is that they have a lot of DPM. Well, with a 12.9-second reload time, DPM is not exactly the Takahashi's strong suit. Look how long it takes us to kill this Colbert right here. I mean, any other light cruiser would have had that guy sunk in 2 seconds. But not the Takahashi. We have to wait 13. In any case, this sequence here is the one that I was referring to earlier when I told you that the gameplay should demonstrate the rather poor qualities of this vessel. You see, we have a Colbert and we have a Minotaur out there. Now, to be fair, Colbert, I think, has the highest AP DPM in the entire game. It was the highest DPM before the Colbert got a reload buff, but afterwards, who knows? And then the Minotaur is no slouch either. It's got a really quick rate of fire, and it's got that Royal Navy AP with improved penetration angles and short fuses and the like. So these guys are going to be pretty dangerous opponents to a cruiser, which, by the way, has absolutely no armor either. That is kind of the nature of the game when it comes to this IJN line. The armor is 25mm plating everywhere, along the bow, the stern, the upper belt armor. The only thing that's somewhat decent, I suppose, is the deck armor, which is 27mm. So I guess theoretically it can bounce 15-inch guns. Not that you see a ton of those at Tier 8 and Legendary tier. 16-inch guns will, of course, overmatch that, and it doesn't really matter how thick the deck is if you're fighting that kind of battleship. So basically, you don't want to get shot, certainly by battleships. This thing will blow up if that occurs. But even by these light cruisers, you don't want to get shot by them either. They have much faster DPM than you. And did you see that right there? How the Colbert's AP just took out one of our turrets. Well, there goes another one. That is another problem with this ship. These turrets have no armor either. The front plate of the turrets actually does have some armor. The value, I think, is only, it's only 32mm. And then the armor on the sides and the rear of the turret is actually 25. So these turrets are basically covered in paper. A slight knock on something could take them out. Oh, and I said the AP was mostly ineffective. There, I guess we do get 2 citadels against the Colbert who turn broadside. But, of course, it is fairly easy to access that citadel with a light cruiser. I think anything could have done that. That is a light cruiser in this position. So don't let that fool you. Most of the time, you're not getting citadels with this AP, certainly. And it's just not very good. In any case, we do manage to take the Colbert out, which is nice, but that still leaves the Minotaur. And this thing cannot go toe-to-toe with a Minotaur. You can see one of our turrets is still broken. It's just come back online. And the Minotaur is pushing in toward our torpedoes. We're trying to launch those at him because, well, we're not going to take this guy out with our guns. I can tell you that. We're going to need some of these torpedoes to land in order to sink him. Of course, he does have sonar, and so does the Takahashi for that matter. It's actually got a unique sonar, which I haven't talked about until this point, but you can see there are 5 charges. It starts out with 6, and I think the reason for that is because there's some improved characteristics on this sonar. It does spot torpedoes at a range of 6 kilometers, which is gigantic. I think that might be the longest torpedo spotting range in the entire game. That's a lot of utility for your team, I suppose, if you're spotting torpedoes that far away. And the detection of ships is good too, at 4.8 kilometers. But in return, the thing only has a 66-second duration. Ironically, still longer than the gross occur firsts at 60 seconds. What's up with that? Am I right? But, well, that 60-second duration, that's perhaps not ideal. Although you do get 6 charges of it to make up for that. In any case, look at what the Minotaur is doing here. Look at how much damage he's able to inflict to us with his Royal Navy AP, and how little damage we're able to deal in return. Sure, when these shells connect, and they can penetrate the Minotaur's armor everywhere, because he also is coated in like 25, and I think he's got 16 on the bow, something like that. In any case, this HE can pen, and when it does, I mean, it can get good results. But here's the issue, right? We're fighting this Minotaur basically 1v1, and practically every time he hits us with this AP, he does a little bit of damage at least, but crucially, he's taking out all of our guns. All of them. I think I have 2 online right now. We've just had to DCP so that we can get 4. We're still missing 1, though. And, well, we've got again, 12.9 second reload, right? Oh, there goes one of the guns permanently. We've got a 12.9 second reload. And that's bad enough. But if you take one of these turrets off the board and you remove some of these guns from play, because this paper-thin armor can't protect the turrets from being either perma-broke or temporarily broke, well, that already cuts down your massively reduced DPM to almost nothing. And even though this Minotaur is not at, a good large amount of health, we're not going to be able to sink him because he keeps taking out our turrets. And now we've got the Brindisi joining the party. He's at basically full health. He's a heavy cruiser. I don't know if he's firing SAP or just HE. But this right here is basically the last shot against the Minotaur. We go down with only 66,000 damage done. And yeah, when it comes to farming battleships, perhaps, this thing might be okay. But if you are forced to fight on sort of equal footing with a light cruiser, like the Minotaur, well, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Everything's going to out-DPM you. And your turrets have 0 armor, so expect them to get taken out frequently. And when that happens, well, you can't really do much, can you? So, unfortunately, I don't think the Takahashi is a very good ship. The rest of that line, the IJN light cruiser line, might be okay. I think it kind of is, up until Tier 7 anyway, where the Shimanto is all right, but the cruisers below that on the tech tree line are, I think, a little bit better. Shimanto is iffy. Takahashi is just not good. It just isn't. I don't think it's worth grinding. I think it needs a buff to the reload time on its guns, because I really don't understand what the justification is for having a 13-second reload. It's not like these guns have some sort of fantastic fire chance where you're guaranteed to fire every single time. It's not like the Alpha Strike is that crazy. I mean, it is big compared to, I suppose, other light cruisers in the game, but 13 seconds on the reload time just doesn't make sense to me, and it really puts you at a disadvantage. I realize the Minotaur is a legendary tier ship, of course, so you would expect it to have an advantage over a tier 8 cruiser, but suppose we were playing something like, I don't know, the Seattle at tier 8, which is also a light cruiser. Suppose we were playing that, or really anything else at tier 8. Frankly, I don't think there are a lot of light cruisers. I think most of them are heavy. We've only got really the Seattle, the Takahashi, the Neptune, the Sejong. I think Neptune, Sejong, Seattle, any of those probably would have fared better against the Minotaur in that situation. And they might not have lost their turrets as quickly either. I mean, even the Sejong, which is a very lightly armored ship, even it's got 32 millimeter side plating at least everywhere on the turrets, on the front, the sides, and the back. Takahashi doesn't even have that. It's got paper-thin turrets. So, yeah, us losing the turrets and having our already handicapped DPM handicapped even more, just no shot. So, unless this particular vessel gets a buff, I really don't see it as being worth grinding to on the tech tree line. There are probably some other choices that you could go for if you want a light tier 8 cruiser, like the Seattle, where you at least get radar, which is some nice utility, or the Neptune, which has a smoke screen and much higher DPM, or the Sejong, which also has torpedoes, but it's much better at being a torpedo boat, because they are deep water torpedoes, which means they are very difficult to spot. they can only do damage to cruisers, battleships, and CVs, so you can't really use them against destroyers, but they've got very long range. They're very stealthy, they're fairly fast, and you've got as many of them as you get on the Takahashi, and then plus you get a reload booster on top of that. The DPM on the Sejong is a little anemic as well, but it's better than the Takahashi when it comes to the main guns. And basically, I would be playing the Sejong every time over this. I don't think it's a very good ship, unfortunately. Although we are top of the leaderboard on this losing game, and if you were paying attention, you might have seen some amusement courtesy of the friendly Shimikazes, who were doing some rather amusing things, I think. But yeah, Takahashi, not a great time. Let me know your thoughts on the ship. I don't know if everybody has this negative of an opinion on it as I do, so I'd be curious to hear what you have to say, but I don't think it's very good. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already. We just hit 9,000 subscribers, I think, yesterday, so I thank you all for your continued support over these last 4 years. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.